everybody. It is Wednesday, October 8th. Welcome to episode 13 of LivLive. I am so ridiculously excited to have Allie Rood here this morning. We met years ago. I think we've never met in person, but she was starting to put together a film on design build, kind of based on the Prickly Mountain area, and we connected through some mutual friends and had some really fun Zoom calls. And she's been working on this for over a decade, and it premieres next week, actually. So really excited to have you here, Allie, and to dig into it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, excited to be here and start to grease the Q&A wheels.
Yeah, so Prickly Mountain, a lot of people don't know that much, or a lot of people in our world kind of know about it, but for the regular man on street, it's in Vermont, right? Can you kind of give us a little bit of a background on that whole area and what it's all about?
Yeah, Prickly Mountain is a road, I guess, and a kind of cluster, a development that started in the 60s in Warren, Vermont. It's in East Warren. And it was a group of kind of Yale architects that had just graduated from their master's program, and all of them had a propensity for getting their hands dirty and using their bodies. And I think they just were all kind of like, wait a second, we don't get to build the things that we design. That there's like, what's up with that disconnect? And kind of as products of the 50s, really, there was that sense of optimism really present then. And they came to East Warren. Sugarbush ski resort had kind of just gotten going. It was Mascara Mountain, I think, before that. So there was this kind of, I don't know, wealthy group of people that were coming up from the cities their idea was, let's build some crazy ski chalets. And so I think, Prickly Mountain was born. I think the technical name came because they were up looking at the land and someone fell in a pricker bush or something. So then they called it Prickly Mountain. And there is a small mountain behind it in the Northfield Range. And then it looks east on the Green Mountains and Sugarbush and all of that. So it's not necessarily at Sugarbush. It's removed. And because of that, it's kind of, in a lot of ways, it really isn't a place where there are a bunch of ski chalets. I mean, now with the way that the world has gone, there are Airbnbs and things like that up there, but bunch of different developments sort of formed that kind of ended up being more affordable housing and more experimental. And
I was going to say experimental is kind of a good word, right? Because these Yale graduates come out and they kind of form this counterculture movement of like, let's just build stuff and kind of figure this. We don't know what it's going to be, right? And it was they bought like 400 acres or something, financed that. Essentially homeless architecture students, which most architecture students kind of are when they get out of school. It's like, what are we going to do? They just started building stuff, and then your dad was part of that movement. That quote unquote movement, right? So you ended up growing up there.
Yeah. So the title of the film is Prickly Mountain and My Design Build Life, because I actually didn't technically grow up on Prickly Mountain. I grew up in Warren and on Fuller Hill, which is probably one little valley. I say valley. I mean, it's one big valley, the Mad River Valley, but I grew up maybe a quarter a mile or a mile away from Prickly. So I was immersed in these buildings by virtue of, being friends with the other architects' kids. And so I got to play in the houses. And the community is really based around a lot of traditions. So we have, we all get together and build a 4th of July float, which has gained a huge amount of media attention for the last 40 years that it's been going on, for the Warren 4th of July parade. We have, a prickly, we call it the prickly pageant, but a Christmas party and, Easter, and there's a Memorial Day hike up Prickly Mountain every year. So there's a real sense of deep community, I think, rooted in tradition, and, doing things yearly. And my dad got there in the 70s. So he was part of that kind of secondary wave of architects, or for him, he found architecture through moving to Warren and working for Dave Sellers, who was one of the architects, part of the initial kind of movement. And yeah, he was kind of in that category of people looking to, get their hands dirty as well, and kind of was able to see a different way of practicing architecture, because I don't think the traditional form, as I'm sure you talk about a lot, was necessarily what he was attracted to.
I think I have to share some photos now just so that people kind of have an idea of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So this is a David Sellers house?
Yep. So that's kind of the house as is now, but he started, you can see on that far right, looker's right, there's that red roof. That was the first iteration, and then it just grew in increments.
Is that the same? Is that this one?
This is Dimetrodon. So this is a 6-unit. Essentially, this was, a little bit later, it was architects Jim Sanford and Bill McClay and inventor Richard Travers came together when they were probably 20 years old and started, same thing, building this in increments, expanded upon it. And this was kind of co-housing before anyone was really using that word.
Yeah. To that point, like, how many people would live in this house and just kind of.
So initially it was those 3 guys, and they built that central tower called the community building, which is now its own unit. And I think within a couple years there was the CB unit. Then there was, moving kind of away from that. First there was Trav's unit. The idea was originally it would actually be 10 units. So there'd be a whole other section coming towards us, repeating as it's kind of doing so on the backside. But they ended up not doing the whole thing. So it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 6 units. Trav. Yeah. So there were at any given point 6 families living there.
And have you been inside most of these houses, or all these houses?
I've been inside, and the film, as I've mentioned, that I kind of was talking to you about, is a feature film. So we as viewers get an immersive experience of quite a few of these houses. Yeah.
This is a David Sellers, right? Is this the
Archie
bunker?
This one's off of Prickly Mountain, and it's in his later career, he started experimenting with concrete. I think hugely because a lot of his houses burnt down. And there was this idea of, how can we make something last for 1,000 years? Why are we, And so, yeah, this is Archie Bunker, which is an Airbnb. You can find it online, and that is close to Sugarbush.
I think, aren't there 2? As I was just kind of poking around, I think his house is also Airbnb. I think his son's running it, right? As an Airbnb. I can't remember which one.
Yeah. So yeah, Dave, rest in peace, passed away last year, or earlier this year, should I say. And that's actually the inside of the tack house. What is that? Pretty sure that's the inside of the tack house. Yeah. Which we just saw first. But yeah, Parker, his son, is managing. So the Madsonian and the Archie Bunker are both houses that you can rent on Airbnb. And the Madsonian house is owned and was financed by the Madsonian Museum in Waitsfield, which is the Museum of Industrial Design that Dave started later in his life as well. And yeah, that's it. It's a huge kind of a fun thing to do if you ever find yourself in the Mad River Valley and want to check out some really cool old inventions. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to think back in time. I wish we recorded it, or somebody recorded it, but we did a call during COVID, right? So I think it was me, you, and David Supple, and David Sellers was on it. Keith Zawistowski, who's a classmate and colleague of mine. A lot of people who are really, driven in the world of design build. And just listening to David Sellers just being so clean cut, simple about this movement was just like really inspiring. It's like, we're just building stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like, they sent us out of architecture school to go and design stuff, and we don't know how to build it. How are we going to tell someone how to build something that we've never built, right? And
Yeah,
so it
exactly.
was just, it was really, really cool to listen to him. And like to him, it was just not really that complicated. Like, or, you know, the whole story behind it wasn't this big movement. They were just going and building stuff, right? Having fun. That's kind of what I took away from it. I mean, there is a counterculture tone in that whole call, which is really funny, which is a lot of it is kind of sticking it to the man.
Yeah.
Like this whole world of licensing and building codes and all these rules, like keeping us from just creating dwellings and structure. It just, you know, and I'm just going to say it because there's a lot of swearing on that call. It was
Yeah.
bullshit, right?
Uh-huh.
Who's going to tell me I can't just go build something, right?
Well, and
Why not?
I think that's like, you know, there's a few things in Vermont still to this day. There are no currently, I think things are changing now, sadly. There are no building codes for residential homes. So that was another thing. And I don't know if they were explicitly aware of that or if that was a happy accident, but they, you know, still to this day, you can get away with. And I think that's rooted in the farming culture and the fact that Vermont for a long time was the end of the road and people needed to do what they needed to do to get by. And so I think what's beautiful about the design build movement is it's rooted in tradition as much as it's rooted in future thinking, in the sense that, like, you know, all of these prickly houses are being recognized as being part of Vermont's vernacular now, because they've been there for 50 years. And because they are a representation of their surroundings, that the materials used were what was available for them in the time on site. So yeah, I think I have kind of a whole bunch of interviews with a lot of people, but quite a few with Dave Sellers that obviously didn't make it into the film. And on a side note, I'm excited to work with the US Modernism has a platform for me to be able to store some of that archival footage. So in the future, people will have access to it. But his story was really simple. He was an intern for Paul Rudolph in the early 60s. He was going to grad school at Yale. Paul Rudolph was the president at the time, or the dean of the architecture school. And he was designing a building on campus, and Dave was like a fill-in engineer or something on site. And Paul Rudolph, this like fancy architect with the suit, walks on site, tells all these people what to do, and leaves. And half the builders basically are flipping the guy off behind his back. And they're like, this guy doesn't know anything. And Dave's kind of like, what do you mean? He's the architect. Of course he knows he's designing the building. And they're like, this would be a completely different building if this guy knew how to build. And so Dave's thing that is like deep in my mind, I think about all the time with anything. It's not just architecture and design. It's a way of life. Is how can you tell someone else how to dig the hole if you haven't dug the hole yourself?
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's kind of.
Yeah. And you know, more of the folklore behind it is, you know, they didn't have drawings or they didn't have blueprints, right? So there's a little bit of a make it up as you go in your research or digging in a little bit. There have to be sketches, whether or not they're carved into a tree or something. Like, is there any evidence of the evolution of these creations?
Definitely. Yeah. I think that's kind of a myth. It's like you said, there's like that counterculture, you know, people like to lean into that maybe a little bit more than is true, but absolutely all of these guys, if there's any kind of single commonality, it's that they're all artists, they're all drawers, they're all thinking with their hands, but with their, you know, they're constantly sketching. It's just, maybe it's on a napkin, maybe it's on 2x4s that are now buried by drywall, or models made from clay. You know, the Sibley house, which is a house you haven't shown, but is kind of the crown jewel, I think, of my film. You know, Bill Reinecke, the architect, said he came up with the idea just down in the river with some clay from the river. So yeah, I think fundamentally the whole thing with design build is something that the founder of Yes Tomorrow Design Build School, John Connell, said. But he's like, there are a lot of really good builders building a lot of really crappy houses, because kind of at the forefront, it's design build, it's design led construction. And so I think that comes through with the film, but I think that was always the driving kind of thing that my dad always pushed is like, it's intention, it's having the skills to create something that's beautiful. You know, that's the tripod, Vitruvius's tripod of beautiful, usable, and what is it? Commodity, beauty, and I'm
I
forgetting.
don't know. I have a Vitruvius book over there somewhere.
It's hilarious. Forever that was like the same thing. Every time I interviewed my dad, he'd be like, the tripod. But yeah, I mean, essentially the name of the game here is making something that's beautiful. So I think what's crazy about the design build movement here is that it was improvisation, but to compare it to jazz, right? Like there's still a formality, there's still a baseline of understanding and technical skill that you have to have in order to create really beautiful jazz music, or even in the vein of jam band music, right? Fish is a iconic jam band from Vermont, and it's all kind of cut from the same thread.
Yeah, I'd say Demetra is probably a little more jazz or a little bit more jam band, right? And then you can go over here. Is that the Pyramid House?
That's it. That's the Sibley House there. That's jazz.
A little bit more jazz, right?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, there's a fair amount of materials that were, and this is me like in my own head. I obviously haven't done the depths of research that you have, but I mean, there's a lot of experimentation with different materials and testing and trying to understand how you can fail and learning from it. But is there also a level of, using what's readily available, like what's on sale, right? Or what's available at the local hardware store? Is there kind of an off-the-shelf component thinking to it as well?
I think so. I mean, I think more it was heavy use with plywood, because that was super cheap then. And obviously, like, we're in a different world now. And what does design build mean now? All these things. That's a whole rat's nest that I didn't even get into. I think the key for me is it's the problem solving technique. But so yeah, those older houses were plywood and plexiglass. And but I think even through to today, you can see a lot of kind of reused old lumber. I think even the idea of like timber framing with old wood is totally within the ethos of design build. Houses today that are part of the same sort of movement, like you could say my house in a lot of ways, look to use maybe what's on sale, but also like creatively problem solve with what you have. Say, I was able to reclaim a bunch of beadboard, and we have reused it for I've got like a deck that's inside and outside, and we've used that, in a creative way to kind of how you use new beadboard, I guess. But I think it's a comfortability with living in unfinished spaces, with, not using the prettiest, nicest, newest material, using construction lumber in a finished sort of way. A lot of these guys built their own doors. Jim loves to build his own light fixtures. So there's a real spirit of, I actually finally just had this realization. I was in a friend's house, and it's a beautiful house. Her dad is a fine craftsman, beautiful building. But like the railings are all kind of prefab materials I think you'd find at Home Depot. Whereas the prickly way would be like, just put something up that's 2x4s for right now. And then you might live with that for a while, but like what kind of inspiration comes to you? And eventually, how do you want to craft something that's bespoke, even if it is made out of 2x4s? That's beautiful. That's artistic. So
I love that. And I'm going to put up another photo, and this is a self plug. So that's my treehouse project this summer for my daughter. So it actually looks pretty formal, but it was a total make it up as you go. I put a couple beams up across the trees and would stare at it one weekend and then continue to stare at it and then start to shape it. And it was kind of going in the Pyramid House way. My daughter's like, she just wasn't digging it from the sketches. So we just kind of continued to shape it, right? I got my corrugated metal. I've got my plexiglass windows. Got raw wood interiors. There's the outside is actually cedar, which it wasn't going to be cedar because the local Lowe's only had the pressure treated fence boards. But then I was at another Lowe's, and they had cedar fence boards, right? So those are $2.68. but they only come in 6-foot lengths. So then now that's kind of like my module. So the whole time I'm shaping this thing and trying to figure out as I go, I'm definitely thinking about these prickly mountain people and how you just kind of shape it and you put something up. If you don't like it, you change it, right? Eventually you just keep kind of modifying. And honestly, Frank Lloyd Wright, if you go to, as formal as his projects were, if you go to his home and studio in Oak Park, it is weird. It is just experimentation, laboratory, just testing different things, right? It's beautiful. But you can see, or even Thomas Jefferson in Monticello, there's just there's a weight that goes through the floor because he built a calendar, but didn't design it right. So he's missing Sunday or something. So he just cut a hole in the floor. Like that whimsy, that just not taking yourself too seriously and just having some fun with it. I love summoning that in a world of very formal architecture and construction and rule sets and markets, right? So
I think, people, it's a weird thing making a film where you're in it and it's about your community. But obviously that's a character in a story. I am who I am. But I think a lot of friends had this realization of kind of this explains so much about you, because I think, there's two sides of the coin. You could call me impulsive or you could call me decisive or whatever, but I was raised to just do it in the same vein of what you're talking about, not be precious. And, and luckily I then studied art. And I think that's hugely part of that design thinking ideology is iteration, and just do something and then respond to that. Keep doing something and then respond to it, because otherwise you can spend, and some people do spend years and years or days and days thinking about something, fully flesh it out and then do it. And maybe it's great, but that's not me.
No, and we were talking about it before, I would never have done LivLive if I was going to make it. For 3 years, I'm like, I just need to do this show. And I kept trying to figure out what it was, who my audience was, what the format is. It's like, just do a 30-minute live show, and if you build it, they will come, right? So now I have awesome guests like Allie here. But kind of circling back to that, so you're, because I think the film evolved to be a little bit of your story and how it all intertwines with living and growing up there and how that goes into making this film. Can you kind of talk about what that relationship?
Yeah. I mean, to just kind of briefly go through the timeline, I think when I started this film, I had worked on some films. I didn't study filmmaking in college. But I was definitely, somewhat in some sort of a filmmaking career at the time. And I kind of thought, I've been explaining this community that I grew up in for my entire life. Other kids who grew up in Dimetrodon, they wrote their college essays about it. We all have a lifetime of kind of talking about it. And I thought, what a perfect medium, filmmaking. Make a documentary of whatever kind about this movement. At the time, architect Barry Simpson, who was part of the initial kind of inspiration and energy, had just passed away. That was 2017. And I just thought, let me just start interviewing people. I'll just, and there was no pressure, because it was like, well, I grew up in this community. My access is amazing. If I apply for grants, they're always asking, what's your access to your subject? And my access is, it's my family and it's my community. Right. So I was living in New Zealand at the time. I was kind of looking for a way to reconnect with where I grew up. I'd spent, this point I've moved back to Vermont, but I spent 18 years away basically. So I spent all this time explaining a place I was from, and I wanted to reconnect. And so, initially I wanted the film to be like Helvetica. I wanted it to be like super designy, pristine. I come from an advertisement filmmaking background, and, action sports, everything is beautiful. And, even there is like this DIY aspect to things, but not really an advertisement. You can't, everything needs to be beautiful. And so and I felt like anything about design, it needs to be beautiful. But what I realized was the real story, and what people kept saying was my connection to the community. And then, one grant early on said it looked like my footage, the way I'd edited it, I was like a fly on the wall. And it just seemed really disjointed, because the community, you know, the whole movement is DIY. The whole movement is about imperfection and process and, you know, giving things time and not being scared of living in an unfinished sort of environment. So yeah, I think just by virtue of deeply who I am, being unafraid to be vulnerable and present myself on screen, and understand that you're always going to feel like it could be a million times better. You know, there's a million ways I would have done this film in hindsight, but then it wouldn't be this film. So it's like, right. All in all, we've packaged it up and it's done, and it needed to be finished. And it's a nice little thing. And I think, you know, the reason it works is because my story's in there and because my background and connection to design build, and then ultimately seeing how that's translated to me as a filmmaker, and a human just operating is, I think, the emotional connection that people needed, because the drafts I edited myself before I got Oliver, my editor, on board were just horrible. I mean, it was just like highlight reels of buildings out of context almost, and talking heads. And yeah, I've learned immensely that, you know, the process of filmmaking is design build, in the sense that you don't know what no matter who you are, how many accolades as a director you've received, every project is different. And especially as a documentary film, as a documentary filmmaker, not a fictional person working with a script, you don't know what you're going to get. So you start with something and the end product is probably what you envisioned, but it's, to get there, it's been a long and winding road. And so, yeah, I think it's kind of crazy in the end to see where we got to, and where I started, and to actually have come full circle and realize what we've made is exactly what I set out to make from the get-go. So
I would say, and I haven't seen the film yet, but in just kind of the description of it, from the comedy world, I think it would parallel like one of the greatest movies of all time, which is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Right? Like, I didn't really know where it was. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how they all designed it, but I don't know that they totally understood where it was going to go when they started to make it. They had some really great content, some really great genius. And then next thing you know, like, let's have fun with some coconuts. Right? Now that's like a part of the movie or part of the film. And then at the end, you know, it's just going to be really confusing because we're going to actually murder the filmmakers, and then we're just going to end the movie. Yeah. Right. I don't mean to compare your film to Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but I really enjoy the authenticity to that, right? Like, it's just you can almost see what's behind, like, not just the content of the film, but like what's behind the making of it, and these people getting together, figuring out how to tell this story. So, and kind of back to your film. Sorry to go on a Monty Python.
No, I'm flattered. My film can be compared to Monty Python, great, but
what? So, in terms of the interviews that you have in the film, so who were some of the folks that you spoke with who were featured?
Yeah, so I started by interviewing Dave Sellers. He is he was an incredible source of inspiration for pretty much everyone who's part of the movement. He himself had some contentious personal history that both made the process of making the film incredibly hard for me at times, as well as it really shaped how we ended up crafting this film about a community. And I think that's another thing that's really different than your standard architecture film. Is usually it is about this like stroke of one person's genius. And I think in a lot of ways we could have crafted the story of like Dave Sellers, the godfather of design build, because there's a lot of literature out there like that. But I think that wasn't my experience. And so being able to once again lean on my experience and my perspective kind of allowed me to do whatever I wanted. And what I wanted to do was make a film about community. And so it's kind of shocking. You could say it's irresponsible. I think the first year I was living in New Zealand, came up with this idea I'll never forget. And then that spring, frequently I ended up shooting stuff in spring. I was visiting my family maybe for like 2 or 3 months, and I was just possessed with, I don't know what it was, but I interviewed 60 people. It ended up, I didn't interview lots of opposing views. I just interviewed everyone in the community. I interviewed Dave Sellers multiple times, and Jim Samford, Trav, and Bill McClay, all part of the Dimetrodon. I interviewed Danny Sagan, who wrote, actually, I'll recommend this book, Architecture Improvisation. Can you see it? He kind of ended up being the historian of the film. He'll be at the premiere on Saturday in New York. Gosh, who I didn't interview? I interviewed my dad. I think I struggled because at the end of all those interviews, it was a bunch of just men, and my editor kind of described it as hero worshiping, right? I didn't have any opposing takes. Steve Bedaines I interviewed early on, who's part of Jersey Devil. I didn't interview anyone who wasn't a practicing design build practitioner. And it was, because of the times, because of the nature maybe of the opportunities presented, I only interviewed 3 women. Ellen Strauss, who's married to Jim Samford. She's an architect, but self-proclaimed not a design build architect, even though she has the experience. Vance Smith, who was a Harvard architect that came up and worked at Goddard with Dave and helped build Dimetrodon, and she is a design build architect. And Connie Coleman, I interviewed. I interviewed a lot of the partners of the Dimetrodon guys, because inevitably everyone involved with Dimetrodon was building. I interviewed Alex McClay, who is married to Bill McClay. So I interviewed women, but I kind of struggled for a long time because I sat with all these amazing interviews of people just talking the gospel of design build. But yeah, there wasn't really depth to it, because like I said, it was kind of hero worshiping. It was me going and asking these people, what is design build? And yeah.
So how did you get the counterpoint or the depth?
Yeah, I think it's still just a optimistic movie. I think what it ended up being, given the interviews I had, it would have been great in hindsight. I wish I'd gotten in touch with Paul Goldberger earlier. I wish I'd talked to a few people who were in Dave's class at Yale who didn't drink the Kool-Aid and who had really successful careers not associated with design build. But yeah, I think given
maybe that'll be the sequel.
Maybe that'll be a sequel. Yeah, I think in the same sense of you saying, okay, I had 6-foot cedar boards and that was my parameter. My parameter was like, at some point we need to stop shooting footage and step back. And with my editor, this was about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, we wrote the story. And I think we realized it had to be a personal documentary. It wasn't just a talking heads. We couldn't, we set out some rules. So we said, show the houses, show, don't tell. And I think by using my story, that kind of created a critical lens in the sense of, this is my experience and how can this be inspirational for the future? I don't think you necessarily walk away like thinking, oh, that was a really big deep dive into design build. Now I understand all the pros and cons. You walk away and you go, what a unique community. What a cool window into a group of people and how they lived.
100%. No, yeah. It's like I'm sure the moment you guys started writing the story and there was kind of that clarity where you're trying to figure out what this is all about. And then this isn't an ego driven thing, but you're like, wait, this is all about me. This is like I am the perspective of this and living and growing up in this and experiencing this. And you know, when you were growing up there, did you feel like it was special, or it just was?
I definitely felt like it was special. Yeah. And I think, I think all the kind of second generation kids felt like it was special. And like I said, kind of separate from Dave Sellers. So I think, the opportunity to interview him, was a huge gift. I feel like I thoroughly enjoyed them, but it made me realize that I didn't experience the magic because of him. I experienced the magic because of this immense, huge community and the traditions I was part of and the houses that already existed. And then it was kind of this crazy research then into my parents' life that you hear stories about, but you don't have a personal relationship to. And yeah, in the process, I definitely kind of transformed into an adult, I would say. In making this film, I was faced with a lot of adult conversations and adult thoughts of how to grapple with these people that all lived their lives. And yeah, our parents, but they're also humans. And, what was in their head in the 60s when they were doing it. And then in the 70s and then in the 80s and, as compared to now. And the theme of kind of age and legacy is really apparent. I mean, physically, because you see old photos and you've seen what they did. And now all the people I interviewed are 70, 80, 90, but also because the film covers 1963 to today, I don't know, that there's all these themes that weren't at all kind of necessarily explicitly focused on, but become apparent by showing, not telling. So
yeah, I could see that, right? There's a lot happened in those 15 years, right?
Yeah. And how do you whittle that down to 90 minutes?
Yeah. It's only 90 minutes? Oh man, we got to have a sequel. Well, we're almost out of time here. I just have kind of like one more question out of curiosity, which is, you've been in all these buildings, all these homes. Is there a favorite space? Like, I don't want to talk about a favorite project. Like, they just have to be so unique in all these little spaces inside or outside. Is there a favorite space in all these that you keep coming back to?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, the other thing is from when I started making the film to now, almost every single house sold and was purchased by people who wanted to be part of this. So initially, a lot of the houses were these like untouchable, crazy buildings, so the one I think about a lot is the Waitsfield 10, which was built by John Connell and 13 years of students at Yes Tomorrow. And that isn't at Prickly, but it's absolutely a Prickly house. When I started filming, the woman living in the house had let it horribly go to absolute hell. Hurricane Irene had dried up her well. So she had lived without water for years. There was a leak going completely through the house. It was a tragedy. And the final year, she abandoned the house over a winter. And so all the toilets split, all the radiant heating split. I mean, the house was fucked up, pardon my language. But my parents just miraculously in 2000, February 2020, ended up buying the house for not much money because they had to, my dad was the perfect person to buy it. He was able to rehab it. And, with quite an investment of time and money, they got the house back. But it's funny now, I say this now because I've now, spent a number of months living in the house with them. I've now built a house because they created a whole affordable housing development on the land. It's 10 acres, which is why it's called the Waitsfield 10. I'm kind of I love looking at the outside of the house, but I actually really don't love the feeling of the inside anymore because I've spent so much time in it. And I think a lot of the houses have that feeling, is like, it's almost better to imagine them and see them, do a tour of them, but not live in them, if that makes sense.
Why? Is it the cobwebs? Is it the cold? Is it the
I think it's just the, like, they're art houses.
Yeah.
I don't know much about some of, like, even Frank Lloyd Wright's buildings, some of the great kind of architectural wonders, or these, like, villa, yeah, great pieces of architecture. I think some of the houses, just the spaces are a little cramped. With the Waitsfield 10 house, it's this like crazy trom wall experiment on the front, but there's no ventilation, and there's like slivers to be like, there's a lot of light coming in, but you actually can't like interact with the outside world inside that house. And so I think they're just so important to experience, and I'm so thankful to be able to interact with the houses. But yeah, those are the aspects that you instantly get the moment you go inside these houses or look at them from the outside. It's like they're not necessarily built for commodity in the same way that a salt box or whatever is built.
Right.
But it doesn't, but yeah, I mean, I think I keep going back to it because I've had so much time now in the Waitsfield 10 house that I think it's kind of a split between that one and the Sibley house, are my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, in the Sibley house. So what's I don't know the floor. I haven't seen the drawings of the plans of it. So as you get closer to the point, are there like are there different floors within it, or is it just all open? Like what's going on inside of it?
It's open, but there's different kind of openings, cantilevered experiences. So, say that triangle plexiglass closest to us, that's a whole room. But then there's 4 stories from there. So you enter that front door and then you have access to the basement immediately. And then it's like half a step up to the kitchen. There's a bedroom and a living room on that level. Then you go up this crazy set of stairs and you're on that second level that you see in that huge window. But then you can kind of see where there's a white level, and then there's even a third level where the pink is.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's even a 4th level. So yeah, I mean, it's not like the safest. Like there's definitely spots where a toddler could easily crawl off of a ledge and fall. So it's
stronger, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's great, and that's totally the ethos of Prickly. And what I grew up with is like, respect the spaces you're in. It's like teaching a kid how to use a knife at a young age. They can learn. They know how to do it. But yeah.
I was just related to that. I studied in Switzerland, and we went to Mario Boda's Tower House, which is just like, it's just iconic. It's just beautiful on Lake Lugano. I believe it's Lake Lugano, but it's just this tower and has all these stairs that go through it. And so the owner was kind enough to let all the students come and walk through it. And she had to have dog gates at all the doors so that the dogs don't go through it. It's like, oh yeah. So we kind of forgot about, people might have dogs, and the dogs,
right,
can't handle the stairs and things like that. So as you go up every level of doors or stairs, you have to move the dog gate. And then each floor didn't have any doors in it either. So bedrooms were just open. And so they added like saloon doors. This is kind of funny, right?
And that's the thing. The people that own these houses, my parents included, it really takes a specific type of person, and the people that own them love them, right? The couple, the Gutropolises who own the Sibley house, are the perfect owners. They love the place. They don't have kids or dogs. They're art collectors. They freaking love their house, and I think that's the thing is you're going to get a lot of people that walk through these houses, see them, and they're like, I appreciate it. I wouldn't want to live there. I think that's the majority. But for instance, the Waitsfield 10 house is for sale right now. So tell your friends. And yeah, it's just gonna, I don't think my parents are hot to trot to immediately sell. There's no like strict time frame, and they haven't even connected with a real estate agent yet, because they're just kind of word of mouth. They want the right person to buy it, and hopefully that right person will, because the thing is, these houses require upkeep that is unconventional. So it takes a little bit of money or the skills to be able to do it yourself. So
And I think some of them are Airbnb available as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them.
Yep.
Super cool. Allie, this is awesome. Like I could just talk about this all day, but I know
Yeah.
you got to go. You got a busy premiere to get ready for. Just to close out, would you just, give us a little bit more information about the premiere? It's Prickly Mountain and My Design Build Life, right?
Yep.
Is the title. You want to just give us a little bit more information, where to find it and all that stuff, and then we'll let you go.
So we have been busting our butts to get it finished so that we can premiere at the Architecture and Design Film Festival. It's our first, a lot of people are like, where else can we see it? This is our first set of premieres of hopefully many. We're going to hopefully try to get it into all of the architecture, design, film festivals out there. I think there's like 6 or 7 others. So starting October 17th and 18th, we are premiering at the Architecture and Design Film Festival, which you can find all of the information on my social media, which is at Prickly Mountain Movie on Instagram. Website is pricklymountain.com. I'm just looking it up now. Sorry. The website is pricklymountainfilm.com. And yeah, the Architecture and Design Film Festival, we are premiering at all of their stops. So starting 17th and 18th in New York City at the Angelica Theater in the Lower East Side. Then I will be premiering at the LA stop on October 26th. And then Vancouver on November, let's see here. We're premiering on November 9th in Vancouver, and then November 13th in Toronto. And then we'll do a run. Yeah, big circle. And then we've just committed, we're going to show for 4 days at the Big Picture here in Waitsfield, Vermont. We'll do a run November 20th to 24th with an event the first night, and then just the opportunity to just buy tickets and see it. And then, yeah, from there, sky's the limit. So the website, we have host a premiere. My goal is to connect with architecture, design universities around the country and the world, hopefully host some events. And yeah, kind of take it step by step. But for the next year or two, the plan is film festivals and events.
Awesome. And you have crowdfunded as well as had some support from the women's filmmakers, right? I'm trying to remember how.
Yeah.
You've pretty much done this, you've stewarded this whole thing.
Yeah. I ran a GoFundMe campaign in 2017, raised $8,000. And I mean, it's just crazy to think about, over the 9 years, the total budget, not including my time in kind, has been $88,000. So that's all been donation based. We had a massive donation in 2021. And I'd say that was the moment I was on track to finishing the film. And then most recently, in 2022, I was brought on through the Women in Film and TV in Washington, D.C. as my fiscal sponsor. So all donations still and always can go through them and be tax exempt. And they've also been an incredible source of support. Actually, today we have a biannual directors Zoom meeting. And those have been I can't wait to go this time because I'm finished, and to give people hope, because I was in that meeting back in 2022, and it was like, when is this thing ever going to end? Meeting other and even imposter syndrome. Like, I'm not a director, but I am. And then in June we did a Seed and Spark campaign, and I successfully raised 15 grand, which got us to where we are now. So
awesome. Well, I'll put the website in the show notes. So please donate, folks. I know that's the hard part, is people in design, build, and architecture and construction, including, Prickly Mountain, don't actually have any money. So it's hard to fundraise in the arts. So if anybody has $5 to give, please give it. But Allie, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to see the final cut, and good luck with everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Look forward to
Absolutely.
talking to you.
Yeah. Talk to you soon.
All right.